Hello boys and girls, welcome to my channel, I'm ForClassic and welcome to BenchART. So for today what I do have in here it is Black Mesa Definitive Edition. This game it is developed by Crowbar Collective and it is using Source Engine. So in case you don't know Crowbar Collective, these guys are a group of guys, obviously, that started to develop a remake of Half-Life 1 15 years ago, and they decide to call themselves the Crowbar Collective, and they end up developing Black Mesa, which is this game, which is a remake of the first game. So this is the definitive edition, which means that this is the version that you should get of the game. This game was released quite some time ago, like probably more than 6 months, maybe 9 months ago, but now it is fully complete. So taking a look to the settings, despite this is using Source Engine, and Source Engine it is usually very optimized and it's a very old engine, it is quite demanding. So it is in fact surprisingly demanding. So I'll be playing with the low settings using 720p, and if you look to the requirements, these guys clearly recommend a quad core with 3.2 GHz, 8 gigs of RAM, and especially a graphic card with 4 GB of dedicated VRAM. So I mean, they don't even specify which one, but as a minimum they do ask for 6 gigs of RAM, a dual core at 2.6, and a graphic card with 2 gigs of VRAM. So looking to the results, I decided to try out the game at 720p at low, medium, and yes, there is a preset called Potato. And it's not even the minimum, you can go below than that. But at Potato I got an average of 103 frames per second with a minimum of 51. Low settings, it was quite acceptable, and it was my chosen go-to setting if you have an MX130, which is 82 frames per second, and the minimum, unfortunately, it is still under 60 frames per second. Median settings provides a very good average of 57 frames per second, but the minimums are at 30 frames per second. So if you ever played like Half-Life 2, or if you played CSGO, probably yes, or any other CS game based on Source Engine, you know that playing at 60 frames per second or under than 60 frames per second, it is quite bad on this engine. So my recommendation, it is always to stay above 60 frames per second as much as possible, but dropping down to Potato settings, it is too much. So that's why I decided to stick up with the low settings. Also, I decided to use this level as a reference for the testing. I mean, this is called the surface tension. This is the most demanding level you will find in game. Probably close to it you will have the Chen levels, which are the last levels that you will find in game. But this specific level, the surface tension, it is very demanding. And comparing to any other level of the game, you should be expecting the double of frame rate in the other levels. So at the moment we are here having around 70 frames per second, as you can see. In any other level of the game aside from Chan, you can expect something like 100 frames per second or more. So it will run awesomely fine, and that's awesome in fact. But the fact that these levels, these outside levels, are so demanding, it is a little bit unfair, because people might start the game and they might be targeting 60 frames per second and they can have 60 frames per second, but as soon as they get out to these outside levels, they start to have something like 30 and 40, and that's pretty bad. So that's why I decided to use already these levels as reference, as the worst case scenario. And by doing this, you know that the game will run just absolutely fine in any other level. Alright, so guys, I think that's all that I want to talk about the performance of Black Mesa. In case you have any doubt, just leave a comment on the comment section below. Let's now talk a little bit about the game itself. So what did change on this definitive edition? To be honest with you, I was expecting more differences in performance. Like, it is pretty much identical. So they massively polished the game and made some art updates throughout the levels. They changed the lighting of the power-up level, for example, and they also redesigned the on-the-rail level. They mentioned that they optimized the game better for low and mid-range PCs, and they changed a little bit the art and color palette of the outside levels. So I think that's up after the Chen levels, where they actually made very pretty good levels. The Chen levels reimagination was excellent. I think they learned a couple of tricks, and they used their new discovered tricks that they actually learned from there to apply some art differences and some optimizations on the predecessor levels that they have been developing throughout these 15 years. So the way that I see the Definitive Edition, I see this as a big shout from the developer team, like, guys, we have been in here for 15 years making this, now it's fully ready, all the levels are available, so it's completely finished, and it is bug-free, mostly, and you can safely now buy the game. Well, there is still some non-issues, but those are still some minor bugs that should get fixed in no time by the developer team. So in case you never knew what the hell is Black Mesa, it is a remake done by a group of people called the Crowbar Collective that started to remake the Half-Life game like 15 years ago, when Source Engine was really a big deal at the time. Their objective was to create Half-Life 1 and envision the game as a Source Engine game with the awesome evoke physics and innovation that made Half-Life 2 special. Although 15 years have passed and possibly the impact that now Black Mesa have, it is not the same as it would be if Black Mesa was released back then, but still it is somewhat amazing. So they started as a mode, but after some years Valve recognized the mode and gave them the seal of approval to sell their game on Steam as an early access title and monetize the game, despite they were using Valve assets and Valve Engine. So yeah, they were picking up the first game, and they were building all the stuff using Half-Life 2 assets and stuff like that, and Valve just reached them and said, it's okay guys, you can develop the game because we are not going to do it, so you can do it and you can make the money for yourselves. Of course, possibly a small cut or probably even a beefy cut it was given to Valve, of course, because of that, but still, as far as I know, the Crowbar Collective was able to make money out of this mode, and this is something really special. If you ask me, I think I've never saw this to happen before. Enlighten me if there was stuff like this, like people making a mode and and after that selling the mode with a seal of approval of the own developer. I don't really know, because they are just rebuilding an entire game that was sold by Valve, so it's weird. So yeah, still, so Crowbar Collective continued to develop their love letter over the years, and now we have this great game, which is one of the best rated games by the community on Steam, and it's actually a very cheap game, especially when it is on sale. So it's winter sale, guys, or autumn sale, so get the game. So seriously, it's a mandatory game that you should get, especially if you loved Half-Life 2 and you never wanted to play the first one because it was too damn dated, because it is an old game. And even if you had completed the original, this one it is still mandatory, because it's not a remaster, it is a remake. So puzzles are sometimes different, because they take advantage of Source technology to make things more interesting. So using physics-based puzzle solving, it is something that it is now required on Black Mesa to complete. And that was something that wasn't really possible in Half-Life 1, because there were barely any physics integration on the games, because yeah, that was because it was very old, and Gold Source didn't really support stuff like Evoke, of course. So I think that's all, guys, so that I want to talk about Black Mesa Definitive Edition. I hope you actually did understood what the hell did change. Hope you keep enjoying the rest of the video, and I do hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
Power level is 100%. Target level is 100%.